Hello, welcome to Unlocking Buddhism. Have you ever had that strange feeling, like you've been here before? Not in the same place, not with the same people, but something about the moment feels familiar. The weight in your chest, the silence after a conversation, the way your breath shortens, even before your mind catches up. It's like life keeps bringing you back to the same crossroads. Different day, different disguise, but the same invisible thread running through it all. And you might ask yourself, why does this keep happening? What am I missing? But maybe it's not punishment. Maybe it's life whispering, not louder but closer, calling you to look at something you've been brushing past, something real, something tender, something unfinished. In this video, we're going to explore that feeling, not to solve it, not to package it, but to understand it, to walk with it, to finally see what it's been trying to show you. Through the lens of Buddhist wisdom, we'll look at why certain problems seem to echo through our lives, and how we can shift from reacting out of habit to responding with clarity. No quick fixes, no forced positivity, just presence, one breath at a time. And before we go deeper, I'd love to hear something from you. What's the first word that comes to mind when you hear the word presence? It could be a feeling, a color, a moment. Whatever shows up, write it in the comments. Just one word. Let it be simple. Let it be yours. Have you ever had that feeling? Like life is stuck on repeat? You get through one tough situation, you breathe a sigh of relief, and then something else shows up. Different scene, different people, but somehow it feels eerily familiar. The same tension, the same frustration, the same emotional weight, back again, just in a new costume. It's not like you're not trying. You put in the effort. You try to be better. You read the self-help books, watch the motivational talks, maybe even start meditating a little. And yet, here you are, again. It's almost like life is gently, maybe not so gently, poking at something you've been avoiding. And here's the strange part. Most of us deal with this the same way we deal with a leaky pipe. We patch it up quickly and move on. We want results, fast. No time to sit in the discomfort, no time to really understand what's going on underneath. But that pipe, it bursts again, and again, and again. What if, and I'm just asking here, what if the problem isn't the pipe, but the way we keep trying to fix it? What if our solutions are just band-aids for wounds we've never properly cleaned? That's when Buddhist teachings start to land differently. Not as some abstract philosophy from thousands of years ago, but as something deeply personal, deeply practical, a mirror, really. Because Buddhism doesn't promise to erase your problems, but it does show you why they keep showing up, and how to meet them with clarity instead of confusion. So if you're tired of repeating the same lessons, if you're ready to stop putting bandages on broken foundations, maybe it's time to sit with the real cause. And that's what we're about to explore together. First, let me tell you something I don't often talk about. When I was a kid, I burned my hand on an iron. Not a brush, not an accident. I pressed it, full palm, onto the hot metal. The pain was instant, sharp, blinding. But the scream that came out of me, it wasn't just pain. It was confusion, shock. And then came my mom rushing into the room. She saw my hand, saw the blister forming already, and then she got mad. Not concerned, not soothing, mad. She snapped, I told you not to touch it." And I just stood there, shaking, ashamed, not just because it hurt, but because she was right. She had told me, and I didn't listen. That moment sat with me for a long time. At first, as a scar, then as a symbol. See, when I think about it now, the pain wasn't the worst part. The worst part was knowing that I could have avoided it, that I chose to ignore the warning, that I didn't trust the advice because I couldn't feel it yet. And that's when I realized something that Buddhism puts into words so clearly. Pain teaches what comfort cannot. And stories are a way of sharing pain before someone else has to feel it. They're like emotional time machines. They let us step into consequences without paying the full price. What if my mom had told me a story instead? What if she'd said, "Do you remember your friend Tim? Last month he touched an iron like that one. Spent a week in the hospital. Couldn't hold a pencil." Would I have still touched it? Probably not. Because now there's a face, a voice, a connection to the lesson. And once we connect emotionally, we begin to see clearly. That's why in the Buddhist tradition, teachings are rarely just rules or lists. They're stories, parables, images, dialogues. Because information alone doesn't change us. You can tell someone 1,000 times to let go of anger, but until they see themselves destroying something beautiful because of it, until they feel the moment of regret, it won't stick. And the truth is, we all touch the iron, again and again, in our own ways. We keep entering relationships we know won't work. We spend money we don't have. We say things we can't unsay. We hold on to grudges we know only poison us. But it's not different. It's just another burn, another layer of scar tissue over a wound that never fully healed because we never cleaned it. We covered it. We distracted ourselves. We told ourselves stories, but not the right kind. Not the kind that teach, the kind that justify. And that's the difference. Buddhist practice invites you to stop telling yourself the same justifications and start listening for the stories that actually teach, the ones that disrupt your cycle, the ones that say, "Here's why this keeps happening." But you can't hear those stories unless you're quiet enough, humble enough, willing enough to see that you've been burning your hand, not because life is unfair, but because you weren't paying attention. And when you do finally see that, everything changes. Because now, the burn isn't just pain, it's a message. Now it's not just something bad that happened, it's something that taught you how to live differently. And that moment, that shift, that's the beginning of wisdom. Let's stay with this for a while longer. That moment when suffering circles back, unexpected, maybe even undeserved. It lands like a familiar weight in the chest. And there's this pause, a quiet voice that whispers, "I thought I was past this." You're not alone. We all carry that voice, that ache of disappointment, that feeling that life is looping itself, handing us the same pain in a different disguise. And the instinct is almost always the same. We try to move past it quickly. We try to fix it, solve it, silence it. But Buddhism doesn't rush this moment. It doesn't dismiss it or numb it out. It invites you to lean in, because that moment right there, the one you usually try to outrun, that's where the real work begins. That's where the loop can finally be broken. The Buddha was never interested in spiritual performance. He didn't teach people how to appear wise. He offered them tools to understand why they were suffering and how to live in a way that didn't create more of it. And here's where it gets challenging, because that understanding doesn't start with meditation or mantras or rituals. It starts with your life, with how you show up when things don't go your way, with how you treat people when no one's watching, with how you speak, how you respond, how you avoid, because how you live becomes how you feel, and how you feel becomes how you react, and how you react becomes your story, told again and again, until you mistake it for who you are. The Dhamma doesn't ask you to escape your story. It asks you to rewrite it, with awareness. But awareness doesn't come from memorizing teachings. It comes from living them, from stumbling, from sitting in the discomfort long enough to notice what's really there, not just the surface pain, but the craving underneath, the expectations, the tight grip on how things should be. And when you begin to see that, something subtle shifts. You realize the problem was never just what happened. It was the way you met it, the way you layered resistance on top of pain, control on top of fear, illusion on top of truth. That's where suffering lives, not in the moment itself, but in the war we start against it. And that war is exhausting. It's why even good things don't feel satisfying for long. It's why peace seems fleeting, because we're still building our lives on sand, hoping the storm won't come this time. But the storm always comes. That's not the failure, that's nature. The failure is when we pretend it shouldn't. That's why Buddhism begins with an honest look at reality. Not a pessimistic one, but a clear one, a grounded one. It says, yes, life is uncertain. Yes, people change. Yes, your body will age. Things will end. Feelings will pass. Control is an illusion. But here's the beauty. When you stop fighting those truths, they stop hurting so much. You start responding instead of reacting. You begin noticing the heat before you touch the iron. You start making space between the moment and your impulse. And in that space, everything changes. You don't need to shout or shut down or disappear. You just need to stay, present, attentive, humble. And maybe, for the first time, you realize that peace isn't something you achieve. It's something you allow. It was always there, just hidden under the noise. But to reach it, you have to be willing to walk through your noise, your stories, your shadows, not to punish yourself, but to finally understand how they work. And once you understand them, they lose their grip. That's the path, not glamorous, not immediate, but astonishingly real. And step by step, as you live this path, not just study it, but truly live it, you find yourself suffering less. Not because life has stopped being hard, but because you've stopped being at war with it. That's the gift of the Dhamma, not a life without fire, but the wisdom to stop burning yourself in it. Let's slow down even more. Because the real value of everything we've talked about, it isn't in remembering the ideas. It's in recognizing them, in real time, in real life. And real life isn't grand. It's not polished or poetic most of the time. It's raw, it's ordinary. And that's exactly where the practice becomes most powerful. It's the middle of the day. You're staring at a screen full of emails. You feel overwhelmed. Your jaw is tight, your shoulders are tense, and that old familiar thought creeps in. I'm never going to catch up. I can't do this. I'm falling behind again. You want to push it away. Open another tab, check your phone, blame someone, blame yourself. But then, maybe just for a second, you remember. This is a moment, just a moment, and you don't have to live the rest of the day from inside it. You pause. You notice the breath you weren't paying attention to. You soften your jaw. Maybe you put a hand on your chest just to feel yourself again. Nothing gets solved, but something shifts. The war inside you quiets, even if just a little. That's the practice. Or maybe it's later. You're standing in the kitchen. Someone you love is talking, but you're only half there. You're still carrying something from earlier, a tone they used, a comment they made. You've been holding on to it all day, quietly building a case in your head. You're tempted to snap, or retreat, or prove how right you are. But then a question arises, not from pride, but from presence. What am I really holding on to here? And why? And suddenly you're back, with them, with the moment. And you hear not just their words, but the person behind them. Maybe you don't need to say anything. Or maybe what you say now comes from somewhere softer. Again, nothing dramatic. Just space. Just breath. Just a different choice. That's the path too. And sometimes it's just you. Alone. No audience. No story to perform. You're brushing your teeth, folding laundry, walking to your car. These tiny, forgettable spaces most of us rush through. Your whole life happens in those spaces. That's where the quiet suffering lives. The old beliefs that whisper, you're not doing enough. You should be someone else by now. You're still not there. And you've listened to those voices so often that they don't even sound like thoughts anymore. They just feel like truth. But not today. Today, you hear them, and instead of obeying, you get curious. Who taught me to talk to myself like this? And do I really want to keep listening? And for the first time, maybe, you choose kindness. Not because it makes you more spiritual, not because it fixes anything instantly, but because it's the only voice in your head that makes space for the person you're becoming. That's what practice is. It's not about controlling every emotion or thought. It's about being there when they arise. Being awake enough to notice the fork in the road. And the more often you notice, the more naturally you begin to choose the path that leads you back to your own heart. Because the truth is, the path isn't something you walk somewhere out there. It's already under your feet. You just need to see it. And when you do, everything ordinary becomes sacred. The coffee cup, the silence, the apology, the pause before the argument, the breath between two words. It's all part of the path now, because you're not running from suffering anymore. You're walking with it, learning from it, letting it soften you into someone more spacious, more grounded, more real. That's not just application. That's transformation. And it happens one small, conscious moment at a time. Maybe the question isn't how to stop suffering. Maybe it's, am I ready to stop turning away from it? There's something strange about pain. It asks for your attention, but never with force. It shows up in your chest when you're quiet, or in the silence after a conversation that didn't go how you wanted. It hides behind frustration, behind tired eyes, behind the sudden urge to check your phone for the 5th time in a minute. And most of us don't recognize it for what it is. We just move faster, blame the schedule, blame someone else, blame ourselves. But the path doesn't open through blame. It opens through stillness, through the softest possible kind of honesty. You don't have to fix anything right now. You don't have to feel peaceful. You just have to notice what's here, before the story starts, before the judgment arrives. It's not about figuring it all out. That's the mind's trick. The idea that if you just understand it better, you'll be free. But real freedom isn't intellectual, it's relational. It's the way you respond to life when it doesn't match what you hoped for. That one shift opens everything. And when you stop avoiding what hurts, you stop repeating it. Not instantly, not forever, but slowly, gently, your life begins to take a different shape. You find yourself breathing in moments you used to rush through. You hear what someone is really saying, because you're no longer consumed by your reaction. You speak with fewer walls. You listen without preparing to defend yourself. Not because you're trying to be better, but because you're being here. And here is where peace lives. Not in some future where everything's resolved, but in the space where nothing has to be rejected. This isn't a destination. It's not a prize you earn for doing everything right. It's a rhythm you learn to trust. A conversation you learn to stay inside, even when it's uncomfortable. Because the truth is, your discomfort is not a mistake. It's a doorway. And when you stop slamming it shut, when you gently lean in, even for one breath, you begin to feel something that isn't fear, something that isn't pressure. You begin to feel yourself, not the version of you think others want, not the person you perform to be online, just you, raw, present, aware, and maybe for the first time in a long time that's enough. Not because everything's been solved, but because nothing is being denied. So if all you do today is pause for one breath, and in that breath, allow whatever is true to be felt, then you've done the work. That's the path. That's the moment everything starts to shift. And from here, it's yours to walk. So maybe this isn't about solving life like a puzzle. Maybe it's about learning how to stay with it. Not just the joyful parts, not just the breakthroughs, but the in-between, the discomfort, the uncertainty, the moments that don't make sense right away. Because that's where real practice begins. Not in escape, but in presence. And when you begin to meet life as it is, not how you wish it were, you start to notice something you couldn't see before. That beneath every repeated pattern, there's a message. And it's not there to punish you, it's there to awaken you, to remind you that you don't have to keep reacting from the same place. You can pause, you can listen, you can respond from somewhere quieter. And when you do, your life, little by little, starts to change. Not on the outside necessarily, but from the inside out. You begin to move through the world with less urgency and more clarity, less control and more connection. You stop waiting to arrive somewhere else and start arriving here, where life has always been happening. And that shift, that subtle, invisible shift from grasping to groundedness, that is the work, that is the path, and you're already on it, just by being here. So if something today stayed with you, if a sentence lingered, if an image surfaced, if a breath felt just a little deeper, don't rush to let it go. Let it echo. Let it settle. Let it keep moving through you after this video ends. And if you feel like sharing, I'd love to hear one word that captures what you're carrying with you now. A thought, a feeling, a phrase, anything. Drop it in the comments. Not for me, for you, because naming it is part of keeping it alive. And if this video felt like a pause you needed, share it with someone. Save it. Revisit it when the loop starts spinning again. These reminders are gentle, but they're powerful. They meet you where you are, every time. Thank you for being here. Not just watching, but feeling. Not just listening, but allowing. And for giving this space your presence. Until next time, take one more breath. The path is still unfolding.